All right, everybody, I am back with a brand new DC update. And this is going to be the definitive video on why I do not trust James Gunn to run DC or be anywhere near these DC characters at all. So for anybody who asks in the future, I'm going to point them to this video. Now, I did something very similar a long time ago, but that was mixed in with some other stuff. And this won't be mixed, amongst other things. This is going to be why I don't like James Gunn and don't trust him. This is going to be that definitive video. But real quick, today I'm celebrating. It is my 10-year anniversary of being a full-time voice actor. I quit a 20-year job that I had 10 years ago today, and it was my first official day off, which would really be on Monday. It was a Monday, but I can't believe I have been doing voice acting for 13 years, but full-time for the last 10. And I thank God every day that I'm alive that I was given my voice and that I am able to use it to help out so many clients. I've been lucky to work on over 4,500 different projects over the last 13 years, and I am thankful for every single one of my clients. So I just had to put that out there. All right, so let's talk about James Gunn here. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is personally why I don't like him, and this is the only time I'm ever going to bring this up. Then I'm going to talk about the many lies of James Gunn, why I don't like him specifically for DC. And we're going to talk about all of this stuff, so I'm going to break it down. This is the only time I'm going to talk about his personal life. People have asked me to talk about this many times in the past, and I just never did it, and I'm never going to do it again. I don't believe in attacking people personally, but this is how I'm going to talk about this specific issue. First of all, James Gunn was fired from Guardians of the Galaxy 3 probably about 6 years ago. He was fired by Disney for some past tweets. And I highly encourage everybody to go find those tweets. I am not going to post them here. I am not going to talk about the content of those tweets, but they are downright disgusting. I mean, beyond disgusting. And let's put it this way. I would never allow my kids to be anywhere near James Gunn or those associated with him. Ever. Okay? That's all I'm going to say on this issue. I am not there to judge people. I believe that's up to higher power to do that. But you also have to use common sense as a person. And somebody making the comments he did, I don't think anybody would let their child near James Gunn. And that's all I'm ever going to say on this issue. And those things alone, I think, disqualify him from running some of the things that he's been running. Okay? Anybody making comments like that, I think it's just disgusting. Just downright deplorable. Some of the most disgusting things you could ever do. Okay? That's all I'm going to say on that. People could do their own research. I'm not here to bring it up or ever talk about it again. In fact, I don't even respond to the messages in my YouTube channel or on Twitter where people start talking about his previous life. I'm just not going to get into those things. It's not for me to judge. All I can do is base, what I would do in my personal life if I was near him or had my kids near him, and it would never happen. Okay? Never going to happen. Never going to happen. All right? So that's one reason. We've also learned over the last year that he actually took credit for other people's work over when he did Guardians of the Galaxy 1. Okay? He claimed a credit for a lot of stuff that was not his. So he made it all to be about him. And it wasn't. There were other people involved. That is well documented in books and on other things online, and I have brought those things up in the past as well. Now, the next thing I want to do is we're going to look at the many lies of James Gunn. And I have to thank the person who put this thread together. I went and found it so I could show it here. And we're going to go through, there's 7 or 8 of these. And there are others, though. There are definitely others. But I want to look at these 7 or 8. I'm going to give my commentary on these. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is why I don't want him anywhere near DC specifically, regardless of the things that I'm going to show, what I talked about at first, and what I'm going to show you. So this is a threefold reason why I don't like James Gunn and don't trust him to be in charge of DC. So let's take a look at some of this stuff. So this came from Men of Steel on Twitter, and this is the best list I've seen him put together. And the first one here, it says, here is a list of all of James Gunn's lies and deception. First, January 7th of 2022. I would never want Walt at DC or Kevin at Marvel's job. He doesn't want to run DC. No, he is running DC. He said, thanks for that compliment, but I would never want Walt at DC or Kevin at Marvel's job. And now he is the co-CEO at Warner Brothers. Now, he said he changed his mind. And I will tell you, everybody is okay to change their mind. But I wouldn't come in and make a definitive list like this. Like, I could tell you that if I was offered a job to do a voice in James Gunn universe, I would turn it down. But I wouldn't come out and say I would never want to do something for DC, because that is absolutely not true. But working for James Gunn, it is true. Second, on March 4th of 2022, why would you choose, and why is it Superman with Henry Cavill? I would and have chosen to do none of them. I'm much more drawn to taking less popular characters and telling their stories. Okay, this was in March of 2022, where he would never choose to do a Superman story. This person asked, if you were allowed to do one of the main characters, Batman, Superman, or Wonder Woman, etc., who would you choose, and why is it Superman with Henry Cavill? And that's when he goes on, I would have chosen to do none of them. I am much more drawn to taking less popular characters and telling their stories. But then later on we find out, and this is kind of an extension to this, that he was writing Superman long before he got hired as the co-CEO, which would have put it back here 2 years ago. So he's not telling the truth, guys. Also, on May 26th of 2020, I'd be okay with whatever David Ayers and Warner's wanted to release with that, no problem. He said he is okay with the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad being released, but then denied it to Ayer. So somebody said, would you be against a release of David Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad? Do you think it'd undermine your movie or help gain interest in it, or have no effect either way? I'd be okay with whatever David Ayers and Warner Brothers wanted to release with no problem. And now we know that David Ayer's Suicide Squad, as long as James Gunn is down there, it's never going to see the light of day. And David Ayer had come out and said that James Gunn told him his movie would have its time, but that they want a few wins under their belt first. Sure. This, to me, is the most damning evidence of James Gunn lying. This is certainly it. So James Gunn came out and said, somebody asked him about Ben Affleck, and James Gunn said, we're working with Ben Affleck, who really wants to be a part of our architecture team, trying to bring things together. And he wants to direct one of our projects, and we're looking forward to him doing that. And he went on to say that we would love for Ben to direct. We're just looking for the right project. And Ben Affleck, in a big interview where he threw a lot of shade towards DC and everything that happened with Joss Whedon and everything, where he'd almost committed Suicide Squad, he said, I would absolutely not work for Gunn. And I've covered this in the past. He said he is not doing anything for the DCU. He wouldn't do anything for the DCU, and he's just not going to be involved with whatever James Gunn is cooking down there with the DCU. And it was a definitive no, he's not going to and never had plans to. Contrary to what James Gunn said. This is the biggest part of what James Gunn said. And James Gunn is all about making himself look good. This is his thing. I believe he is the biggest narcissist I've ever seen for a director or somebody in his position. Fifth, February 9th of 2023. It says, Zach hasn't expressed any interest and seems to be happy doing what he's doing. And yes, we too have talked. James Gunn said he contacted me to express his support about my choices. He's a great guy. Again, he seems really happy with the massive world building he's doing now. And that led to a tweet by Sammy. And I actually saw Zack Snyder specifically talk about this, how he's still interested in continuing and finishing his story if he was given the opportunity. And so again, that's just maybe he hasn't expressed it directly to James Gunn, but for James Gunn to make it seem like he's moved on, he hasn't. He's still talking about it. January 31st of 2023, we didn't fire Henry Cavill. He was never cast. Man of Steel 2 starring Henry Cavill was canceled. Henry Cavill was hired to shoot a scene for Black Adam. So he wasn't cast by Warner Brothers, but he was cast for Black Adam and Man of Steel 2. And again, he was told to go out. And if you look at Henry Cavill's departure and the statement he made, he said he sat down with Henry Cavill and that he was told that he sat down with James Gunn, but he was told by Warner Brothers to go out and announce his return. And so they pulled the rug out from right underneath him. So he never really officially had a contract, but they were moving forward and told him to tell everybody he was back. Deception by Warner Brothers. January 31st of 2023, The Flash is a fantastic movie that completely resets the DCU. And it never did anything of the sort. If you've seen the movie, it absolutely does nothing to reset the DCU or anything to do with it, because you then had movies come out right after it that had nothing to do with any type of a reset, and they're just going into Superman with no explanation whatsoever. And so it doesn't completely reset the DCU. And mind you, he also talked about how this was the most amazing movie, along with a couple of other celebrities who so happen to have projects now that are going on with Warner Brothers. Seems kind of fishy, if you ask me. So this one is an interesting one, and this has to do with the full circle shirts that were announced on April 15th of last year. And then a day after Zach posted that, James Gunn came out, and again, I posted this as one of his narcissistic posts, where he said his people came in and gave him T-shirts with him on there, and he talked about how the people around him love him. Just kind of weird. And this is while Zack Snyder is trying to raise money for suicide awareness, and they raised a lot of money for prevention doing those T-shirts. And I think it's very shameful. Again, it's just a disgusting... Again, James Gunn has to make it all about himself. And guys, there are other things too. Like, that's just the easy list. There are some other things. And, some of those things you could say he changed his mind, but he changes his mind an awful lot. And other lies that come right off the top of my head is when he said he didn't realize that the release date for Superman Legacy coincided with his dad's death. Does anybody believe that? Really? And then just this last week with the filming of Superman Legacy, it was on the exact date of Superman's birthday and also the day that Dune got released in theaters, Dune 2. And James Gunn said he had no idea what that day was and didn't realize it was Superman's birthday until a week prior. Sure, you're in charge. You're writing a movie about a character you say you love and you don't even know the birth date of that character? Seriously? Seriously? You didn't know? Sure. So those are just weird things. Now, let's talk about why I don't think he's good for DC. Now, I don't hate James Gunn's work entirely. I love Slither. I did like the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Didn't care for the third one. And you can go see my review for the third one. And I gave it a favorable review, even though I know the history of James Gunn. And I always tell people, if you come to my channel, I am going to review a movie based on its merits, regardless of who's behind it. And I'm going to do the same thing with Superman Legacy. I will, okay? But you look at other projects he's done, there's some questionable things he's done in the past, and he was also doing stuff like Scooby-Doo and some other movies, okay? He's never done anything that was straight, that was serious, that was taking itself seriously. And then he comes in and he does The Suicide Squad for Warner Brothers, which was a massive misfire on all cylinders. It didn't do well in theaters, and it didn't do well on physical media, and it didn't do all that well on streaming, okay? And there was full frontal nudity in that movie. Those characters were disgusting, juvenile. Nothing was taken seriously. And all it did was crap on everything that came in the DCU before. It was just a disgusting display of James Gunn coming in and trying to take the limelight and just destroy what came before to make it his own. And that's when they introduced Peacemaker, which was a complete bastardization of the comic counterpart. Now, everybody bashes Zack Snyder for changing stuff, and you have to understand, Zack Snyder didn't write anything, but James Gunn wrote and directed The Suicide Squad. He wrote and directed Peacemaker. He is writing and directing Superman Legacy. He's like writing and directing everything, and he was never hired as the writer and director of Warner Brothers. And when Peacemaker came out, holy crap, that movie was disgusting. It was juvenile. And the way he treated the Justice League at the very end was horrifying. It shows you he does not take these characters seriously. He just doesn't. And I even shared the quote where he said that he can't take superheroes seriously. I shared that quote. I talked about how scary that statement was from just, a couple years ago, coming from a guy who's now in charge of DC entirely. And if you go back to my videos when he was originally hired as the CEO, I'm like, okay, he's not going to be writing and directing stuff. He's hired as a co-CEO. But then all of a sudden he's writing and directing everything. Peacemaker Season 2, Superman, Superman Legacy, which is now just Superman. I just, with the way he's treated these DC characters, I could see that he doesn't take them seriously. And, a lot of people are out here saying, you should, being a DC fan, you should just be happy that we're getting another solo, a solo Superman movie. That we haven't had a solo Superman movie in over 10 years. Now, by that logic, you should just accept everything that the studios throw at you. And this is why Star Wars is in the shape it's in. It's why Marvel is the shape it's in. It's why DC is headed where it's headed. Because you're just shoveling in what the studio gives you without having the quality checked. And I don't believe that James Gunn has ever done anything that says he's up to the task to doing the most important movie that has ever been released under the IP of DC Comics. And it has to hit it out of the park or it's game over. And we're not going to see these characters for a long time. And he's the guy in charge. So he has a lot to prove. I'm not just going to blindly say, I'm going to wait and see what comes out. And I was definitely a little more supportive at the beginning of this, but everything that happens makes me less supportive of James Gunn because of his decisions. And I don't want to see him in charge of these characters. I have some severe fears of how Superman Legacy is going, or Superman is going to turn out. I just don't think he's the guy in charge. I would like to be proven wrong. If the movie comes out and ends up being amazing, I will scream at the top of my lungs and I will tell everybody you should go see it. This is the best thing that's ever been done. But do I think that is going to happen? No. And I'm hoping by having my feelings, and the view of this at such a low mark that maybe when it comes out, I'll view it more favorably. I just don't see that happening. I wanted to like The Suicide Squad, and I didn't care for it when it was in theaters. And then I did buy it, and I watched it again on 4K, and I didn't like it. The second time was way worse than the first viewing. And he's the guy that's in charge of the DC stuff. He had, up until that point where he was hired, his movie was the worst performing movie in the whole DCEU. And he's the one that got hired to run the whole freaking thing. And then they backstab us by getting rid of Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, and everybody else. But he's keeping Peacemaker, he's keeping Waller, he's keeping the stuff that was tied around his stuff. But everything else is gone. And he hasn't even explained how that's going to happen yet. So no, I don't trust James Gunn. I'm not going to trust him. He has a lot to prove. I'm not just going to blindly follow what the studios are doing. We have been backstabbed by Warner Brothers for many, many years. And yeah, I've got some real reservations about what's going on. So this is going to be the video that I'm going to put out there for everybody to watch on why I don't trust James Gunn and why I don't think he's right for DC. And you could say wait and see all you want, but I've personally seen enough of his stuff to know I don't want him anywhere near these properties. All right, guys, so there's my update for the day. We will see you on the next one.